emailed me with suggestions and also your points about cultural influence. I've really appreciated it, and during the day or this evening I'll respond to each one of you in terms of the ideas, and then with any more emails that you send to me, I'll build a curriculum from your points for tomorrow so that I make sure that I'm dealing with issues that you want to consider. Okay? Now, you've done really very much what I wanted, so thank you in responding, in putting your ideas down, and I'll show you some of them before I start this morning, because I want to focus this morning on what we call the cultural influences and the organizational influences on yourself in your work and your action research. But as I've always done, I just pause at the beginning just to ask if you've anything you want to bring into the group, just for reflections. Now, you found it much easier just to write an email, and I'll show you some of those in a moment. But again, is there anything that anyone wants to just raise to the group to start the day in terms of your thoughts from yesterday or other ideas? Or should I just go to my emails and show you what to be writing? Yeah. Okay. Right, I'll go straight to those. The emails, you'll see, I just go to the top of my emails and you'll see that the number of people that have been responding. Amongst my other emails that come in, I'll just go down so you can just see the numbers. So you can see that what I've been asking for, you have actually been responding, which is excellent. Now, after we talked briefly with Marie yesterday, Marie Huxtable, Marie went to the website and she put all your action planners so that they are accessible from the web, so anybody can look at anybody else's. And I'll just show you how you can actually access those. So you can actually do that during the day. I'll also show you 1 or 2 points from your emails. You look just as one, dear Jack, this is from Shalita. Is that right, Shalita? A question I'd like to be addressed is, are personal values, i.e. biography, something I have to neutralize in looking at the evidence? Now, each one of your questions and points is really important, and I will be responding to these either during the day or this evening, so by tomorrow you'll all have responses to these, and we'll work together on some of the issues you've raised. But I'd like you just to be able to get into the Spanglefish website that was developed for CPD. Now, to do this, again, you go into my website, theactionresearch.net. You go down the right-hand What's New section here, right down to the virtual learning space for living values and improving practice cooperatively. And this is developing an international action research continuing professional development project. So you go down to there and click. Now, on the left-hand side, you know at the bottom, just as an example, we have Chatri's action plan at the bottom there. But now at the top, with the Thailand CPD, if you click on the Thailand CPD, you will see the list of live URLs for you to access. All of the top ones, and this was very impressive, that so many of you have got your action planners actually posted now, so you can access them. you'll just see that some have got NP. And all I mean by that is not posted. You've got the site set up, so if you go into one of these, it may be some of you have posted already, but that's what you'll get. You'll get the welcome to Spanglefish, but there's no action planner posted at the moment. Now, here is one where if you go into, and is this, do I say Ajahn? Is that Ajahn? Where is Ajahn? Ajahn? That's teacher. So what, all right, who is this? Is this? Right, so this is Bong. Thank you. So, you've all, which is really nice, put those action research planners. Now some of you, and this was really good, answered my point yesterday about some of the cultural influences that are coming into your lives in your workplace. Now, as I went round the groups yesterday, this point seemed very important. The Pong Prapan had actually asked and explained about seniority. And it seems that this idea of seniority affects you quite deeply. So, if you just read that, kids are taught to listen to the senior, follow his or her teaching strictly. If the young ignore and challenge the senior's teaching, they're blamed, regarded as being disrespectful. The value of seniority is passed from one generation to the other. It has influenced the classroom atmosphere. Now, this is what I raised with you yesterday about the good students are preferred not to talk or ask anything in the classroom. They must listen, jot down everything on the blackboard, keep their mouth closed at all times. I'm not surprised why Thai students love to listen, feel, if you like, confident or even nervous when asked to share ideas as a public. I imagine, from my experience, that you all recognize this reflection as valid. This is very important for checking the validity of the ideas that each one of us might have. And so, when I asked you about cultural influences, I had no idea that in Thai culture, this notion of seniority was really significant to you. And it could help to explain why the students in your class do not easily engage in inquiry learning. They do not question you. Their voices are not heard. And so this feels to be a very, very important cultural influence. Now, each one of you that responded has got those very important points that you're raising. But I would like you, at some point, to go into that box, as I say, to look at what you've all been saying. Now let us just bring, again, forgive me with my pronunciation, but this is Patamampong, is that right? Patamampong? Patamampong. That's great, because this is the first time that I've been able to use your name, because you sent me an email. I can now connect with you. And I imagine other people in the room, some for the first time, will be able to know that that is who you are. And this is very important for the action research, that you build a community of people who understand what each other's concerns are. So Patamampong is saying, I'd like to know about how can I improve my skills in action research? How do I know I'm on the right track? How to guide my pre-service teachers to do action research? How can I help them reflect on their action? I'd like to know about the format of action research. Is it the same as traditional research that begins with an introduction, literature review, methodology, result, and discussion? Really good questions that are coming from Patamapon, and I ought to be able to give useful answers. But this is exactly what I was hoping that you would do. But rather than come and talk about that to the microphone, you've clearly preferred to write through the email. Now, this might be a lesson for you with your students, because you will need to get your students' questions so that you can help them to improve their practice. And the technology, if you have, as you have in this room, very good technology, it may be that this approach can be useful to you to get your students' ideas. I'll just do one or two. This is something that we've worked a lot on in Ireland. Now, could I just check, is that Supoch? Yeah. Is that the correct way? Supoch is saying that the teachers has to learn how to use technology in teaching, how to increase the students' ability in reading, criticizing, and paying more attention on politics. Now, when I talk about the cultural influences, I have to be careful to say to you that I do not know the cultural influences that are working on you. I have some insight that working, as I read this quite a lot yesterday on the teaching of Buddha, that this is in my room, and so all guests in the hotel have access to it, that the values here are important within your culture. So I have some insight. I'll show you a quote from an Australian sociologist in a moment, which indicates that we're all influenced by economic globalization. The Thailand, I was seeing the news last night, that in the Thai economy, that it has gone down a little and people are a little anxious. Not as much as in Europe, because the European economies, most of them are in trouble. Now those economic issues affect what happens in the classroom. In the UK, it will mean that there could be less teachers, there will be certainly less support people who can help teachers to improve their practice. When economic times are good, this means more money can be put into the schools with the teachers and resources to improve practice. So the economic globalization is really important. And I'll show you the quote from an Australian academic called Makatakat that says that the principles of what is called economic rationalism, this is where almost everything becomes reduced to economic values. It's the money value that dominates. And this man, Robert Makatakat, is saying, if that is all we have in our policies, it leads to devaluation and demoralization. He's saying that we need to have other values that come into our lives than only the economic, rational policies that quite a lot of our governments pursue. So I'll come to that in a moment about these cultural influences. Politics. When I tried to explore bringing action research into Indonesia, this was in 1991, I was going to Australia and I stayed with my brother in Jakarta, who was working in Jakarta. And the Harvard Business School in America had a unit in Jakarta that I went to see, I went to talk to ask about action research. Now at the time, I didn't know the extent of the corruption within the government. And the researchers in the Harvard Business School explained to me that researchers could not undertake action research where the action researcher had to be honest about what was going on, because if they revealed the truth about what was going on, they could suffer, and in some countries where action research has been tried, people have risked their lives because they have revealed some difficulties with very powerful people. I do not know your Thai political context, so you have to be careful that I'm not making some mistakes when I suggest that you actually write about your Thai political context. So you have to be sensitive to what it is that you feel we say is prudent. The word prudent is important. It means that you are careful and you do not risk your own employment or worse by being honest about difficulties politically. For example, I was learning yesterday about 3 very different sections of Thailand. I was told that in the north and the south and the central, the economic issues are quite different. That if you are working in some of the southern areas of Thailand, you might be experiencing some violence. Some of you may recognize that if you are a teacher where bombs are going off in particular areas of where you are working, this is going to affect you deeply. When I worked in London, we had tremendous difficulties in Ireland. It's called the IRA, which in one context is known as a freedom fighter, in another a terrorist organization, depending on who you are supporting. We're actually letting off bombs in London, where I was working. Now, that created a lot of problems. There was quite a lot of fear. The children could be sent home from the schools. It disrupted the school. So if you are a teacher in the south of Thailand, suffering from these kinds of conditions, you would need to outline some of these influences on you to allow people to understand your context. If in the center you've got good economic opportunities, IPST is able to support you with money, with in-service work, then you've got a different set of cultural influences to make sure you put into your action research. So when you talk about the context, this is really important that you place your action research into your Thai culture. You make sure that the reader understands something about the cultural influences that are working on your inquiry. I didn't know about the seniority. I had no idea that this might influence the inquiry learning. So everybody that I was going around to yesterday that I asked about this idea, because a group here talked about it, were saying, yes, this is true. That seniority and the respect of sometimes the young to the old, or the power of the position of someone, affects how the conversations go. So bring this into the context. You're writing about Thai culture. I mentioned some of the values that I was reading about here, and I picked out a very powerful one because one of my PhD students had brought in a passion for compassion as one of her, we call, standards of judgment. Her academic standard. She believed that she wanted to be judged to the extent to which she could be seen to be showing a passion for compassion in our health service. Here, there was a beautiful section on loving compassion. You will have other values that you know you want to live as fully as you can. Bring those into your introduction to your reader of who you are, who you feel yourself to be, and the values that you're trying to live by. Now this is very important because I was asked a question earlier about the action research. Does it follow the traditional research pattern. Remember, you do an introduction. We call it a framing, so that you introduce yourself to your reader. You introduce yourself also with some of the personal values you hold. So where I was asked about the personal values, do you neutralize your personal values? You cannot neutralize your personal values in action research. You try to stop them becoming biases in your explanation by checking the validity of your explanation with each other. But when you are asked to explain why you do what you do, you cannot help but bring your values into your explanation. I hope I'm making sense here, because the values provide you with your explanatory principles. If I'm asked, why do I come here to do this workshop? If I manage to influence any of you, how might I explain that? I have to bring in the fact that I'm energized by being with you. I have to bring in that personal value of that life-affirming energy, which I feel that I express with you because you evoke this in me. You help to bring that energy out in me because you're all passionate educators, and I love to bring the knowledge of passionate educators to share it around the world. So I have to bring in my love for what I do as an explanation. You'll see this in some of my papers I've published, my keynote addresses to conferences, that I always try to explain what I do with that kind of value. Now, I doubt if anybody here has ever used their love for what they do as an explanatory principle in their research. And yet, as you've been speaking and writing to me and talking in groups, I believe that you love what you do. You actually enjoy the education. There will be difficulties, there are tensions, but you would not be educators and keep going as educators with your students unless you actually had a passion for what you do. So when you explain your influence, always try to bring in your personal values, because these are the ones that motivate you. But try and avoid this idea of bias in your explanation. If I claim that part of what I do is informed by justice, as it is that I taught in a very poor area of London, I went to teach in that area because I wanted to give the pupils who did not have as great a chance as some other pupils, I wanted to give them a better chance. So it was fairness and justice which moved me into that context. So when I explain what I'm doing, I have to bring in that passion for justice. You'll see as well about what we call academic freedom. That I'm fortunate in England, we have that law in 1988 that protects academic freedom. So an academic like myself can actually question authority figures. I can question politicians if I believe that they're actually building policies not on research but on their own biases. And I can do that without threat of losing my job. I can do it without threat within my institution of losing my job. My law, the law in the UK for academic freedom, protects me. And so I have a passion for academic freedom. Now, if I just bring out now some more of the contexts which you told me about in your emails, I want to make sure that we're covering most of the influence that you're feeling are important to you. But just check, as people have written to me, see if you can identify and help to validate these understandings. Because at the moment, they're an individual reflection. Each of these emails is one of your individual reflections. The fact that you can get in this room a number of you agreeing that this is valid enhances, we say, the validity of the reflection. And you could then feel confident that you can actually use this in your own accounts. That point about seniority, I would say, by the number of people that said to me last night, that this really does influence what you do in Thailand. You could all feel confident that you could bring this in. But I will just bring some more so you can just see what people have said. See if I can unlock this so you can read. Have you all read that to see the meaning that is similar to other people saying about the shyness and about the reticence for the inquiry? So the fact that now a number of you are making this point heightens the validity. It increases the validity of this idea that your Thai students seem to lack self-confidence in expressing their opinion to others, even when you provide the chance for them to discuss during the class time. This seems a very important cultural influence that we must work on to really get inquiry learning in your classroom. And you've seen here how easy I think you found it once we've got the emails working to write your concerns and share them, but how difficult it is for quite a number of you to feel the confidence to come and speak in front of the class. It isn't that you don't know, it isn't that you don't have ideas, you do, but there is something about the lack of confidence and shyness within this context that you are feeling, and if you're feeling it as the adults and the senior people, you think of how your students are feeling when this idea of the seniority is very important. Now, here is one from, now can I make sure I've got Payapran, is it Konvika, and about Anjira. Have I pronounced those? I really like this. Again, this was the first group that focused on globalization. So could you just read that and just see what you think? This idea could help you to frame your action research as you're letting your readers know what is important to you. You have got here some really important ideas where you talk about, for example, fusing cultural diversity in the curriculum as a university. we talked a little bit yesterday about different cultural influences that I'd experienced. For example, when I had Hindu students and Sikh students, there were Buddhists, there were followers of Islam, there were Christians, all in the same group. Now, this idea of cultural diversity, you might miss something unless you bring it into your inquiry. So I think you could really make that notion of understanding cultural diversity. For example, I didn't know when I started teaching that the devout, I think it was Muslims, they needed to have certain times for prayer. And there was a particular time, I think it was a Friday afternoon, when the Muslim groups really did need to pray. So if I'd organised my teaching on a Friday afternoon, this went against the cultural values of one of the groups. So bring in, if you very much want to develop an international cultural understanding, do bring this in about cultural diversity in the curriculum. Look at this as well. The quality of analysing and evaluating through information and communication technology. Again, you're all really familiar, as I can see in this room, with the use of information and communication technology. You really are excellent. You built your website faster than any group that I've actually known. You're able to post, most of you. You've got your emails to me. Now this use of ICT is really exciting. When I asked you about bringing it into your research, nobody had actually brought it into your research because the journals in Thailand do not encourage multimedia representation. So you have got, we call, a cultural constraint on you bringing this kind of work into your culture. Because until your research is valued for its multicultural content and its multi-narrative, the multimedia narrative, it's going to be difficult for you to actually increase the status of these kinds of inquiries. You're using this technology. You need, I think, to find ways of bringing the multimedia work into your research, share it with colleagues, so that it is seen to have high status, and this will help you with your inquiry learning. But this, I thought, just in that one paragraph, you had highlighted fundamental issues which you could expand on in the framing for your actual research. This is part of the cultural context. And you could say, some of you, how you want to enhance cultural diversity, an understanding of cultural diversity. Some of you are already wanting to improve and enhance the ICT use with your students. Now, if I just look at one or two other issues, because this was, as I say, it was very exciting to me, because clearly you were writing with a power and a clarity, which is what I was hoping you would be able to say to the microphone. But we found the way to help you to express your ideas. Okay, we'll have a look at one or two others. But that, again, and those have come out of the joint conversations. It's really good that the three of you have been able to agree and actually see that these are important to you. And there is such a power in community. So the more that we can share and agree, the better. Okay? But just look at all these websites that you've actually managed to create. I hope you had a good birthday party last night. Now, here are Shatri's questions. Okay, now, Chatri's questions at the moment are ones focusing on the action research. He will have some on the cultural influences, which I'm focusing on at the moment. But I would hope that I've managed by Friday to really give you suggestions about plans to make this endeavour successful. Now, the key one for all of you, I think, is to give the action planner to your students so that all your students are asked to do what you have already done. And you'll remember, it's quite a simple, what do you want to improve? Why do you want to improve it? What could you do about it? All of these in the Appendix 1, which you could just copy out onto a sheet for your students. But these are the ones that, as I say, for me, are the ones that I learned from the teachers I worked with in that project in 1976. These were the questions the teachers were asking of themselves. So it was very much, okay, I've got a problem or concern. What do I really want to improve? Why am I trying to improve it? It touches onto your values. This gives you a chance to say, well, why am I wanting to improve this? And the why helps you with the explanation later, because it's those reasons that give you your explanation of your influence. But just with your students, if you gave them those questions very simply on a sheet and asked them to fill them in and share them with each other, just as I tried to do with you, that for me would be the best start of all to get your action research going with either your students or colleagues. So focus on that action planner. Focus in on the idea that each person can work to improve what they're doing. And I'll keep coming back to that. I've got the sheet, the action planner. You've got it here, I've got it on the web, but I'll actually show you tomorrow at some point. Right, you can access this, print it off and use it. But that would be, I think, the most important thing for you to do. But let me just see if there are any more issues here with the cultural influences. And if there's anything we're missing, you just say. Where is Rita? Rita? Right. Bigger?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Now, I will need to move the screen up. Yep. Up there, so you can just keep reading. What again excited me about Rita's points is the clarity of the problem. Now, again, I'm a stranger here, and I don't know if this is valid. But going around yesterday, I was beginning to feel that we call constraints, that there were constraints on developing inquiry learning from the Thai curriculum itself and the textbooks that are used. Because if I've understood Rita's point here, and you'll see that there's a similar point about the students preferring to gain the knowledge by memorizing and taking down notes in everything. And there's Rita, having experienced a different system, believing that this is very restrictive in terms of building a solid foundation of the knowledge and the confidence within the student. So for me, I'd be using this idea of being a living contradiction, where Rita holds certain values because she's experienced a more open, a more inquiring system, and the International Baccalaureate has got within its curriculum a commitment to inquiry. And I imagine that Rita is one of the few people in the room who have experienced both the inquiry learning and then coming into the Thai system, where she's feeling that the imposed curriculum, what I was saying about the given curriculum, is quite restrictive. And this is creating in her what I'm calling a living contradiction. She wants to do something, but the external pressures are preventing her from doing it. She must conform to the Thai curriculum, and yet she believes in inquiry learning, in the IB, and actually is living this tension about how to actually adjust to both of these different tensions. That is really well put, Rita. I just thought that, again, very powerful in terms of the establishment of the tension and where it is coming from. Because this is an external influence in terms of the Thai curriculum. It's here, to pass the Thai national examination for university entrance successfully. So, as I was when I started teaching, I said yesterday, I want to get my students through the examinations with the best grades possible, but I knew as I was preparing them for those examinations, I was not actually developing their scientific understanding. I was simply training them to get through the examinations with the best grade possible. Now, this is a tension that I think possibly everybody in the room has felt, that you want to get your students through the university entrance. You've got to do it because of the future of your students. But I think, as Rita is saying, that in terms of, for example, the kind of inquiry learning, the love of the subject, it is not easy to do that whilst at the same time training the students to get through the exam. Now there is a lovely illustration of a pressure which I think you could all acknowledge is working on you in your inquiry. And it's a tension that will keep coming up within your inquiry. Because you want, as far as I understand, to bring more of the inquiry learning from the International Baccalaureate within the experience of the students, and that is what you will be working towards. So again, I really appreciated this careful response, which now has been shared with everyone. And you can begin to see how you can enhance the validity of these individual reflections by checking out with each other that you too are feeling a similar thing in terms of the external pressure. So thanks for that, Peter. That's great. And if I'm not giving you enough time to read any of these, do just let me know.
Dr. Whitehead.
Yeah.
So to make a Rita have a high validity, is it possible that we go to find some, study or somebody, research that support her idea? Or not?
Yes. if you just give me a minute, I'll try to find for you one of the studies of a teacher researcher who was based in the UK with what we call the standard assessment tests. These are called SATs. And it's her account of trying to adjust to this tension. And I'll just see if I can find it. It's in the Masters Educator section of my website. So if you go into the actionresearch.net and into the Master Educator's writings, you'll see. Let's see if we can find. This was a young teacher, it's called Amy Scouse. Amy Scouse. It was her first action research inquiry. And their question was, how have my experiences of Year 2 SATs, these are the standard assessment tasks, it's the same thing as the imposed tests, the examinations, influenced my perceptions of assessment in teaching and learning. So she was trying to enable her students to feel inquiry, to learn in the way that she believed in. But in England, these standard assessment tests are all imposed on the pupils and the teachers. And Amy, as I think you will all be doing, is saying, I found the year very stressful in terms of the underlying pressure. I'll just see if I can make that a little bigger for you. So it's here. I found the year very stressful in terms of the underlying pressure that existed from the knowledge of the judgment my pupils would receive at the end of the year in terms of teaching and learning. This was with the imposition of the tests, the SAT tests. And all these scores are made public, so people feel quite a lot of pressure and tension over this process. And Amy was also conscious that the children felt anxiety, and therefore sparked, and this is what Amy did, it sparked her inquiry into assessment in schools. The reasons for national testing in the UK and the effect this has upon children and teachers in the primary school. So if you wanted to just access some practitioner researchers' response to this tension, you can actually access Amy Scouse's Masters. This was her first unit, and this passed her Masters unit. Okay, now you'll find, that isn't, as I say, if you just go into my website, into the Master Educator's writings, and then just go down the list to Amy Scouse, and that will be the one that actually tackles this in an action research way. There it is. Yeah. And again, all the teachers, which I really like, they've all made their accounts freely available. They say, they're offered as gifts. When they've done this work, they've done the stories, they've simply offered them as gifts to other educators around the world that can be accessed freely and used. Okay, so thank Rita again. Not only in Thai culture, but you can see how this problem goes to the other part of the world in terms of the anxiety, the stress of these imposed assessments. And people are gradually questioning in the UK the validity of these in helping children or teachers to learn. But they're still very powerful. Okay, we've got a few more minutes left. I'll just bring up a few more. again, look at that. This is, yes? SAT, and that SAT is standardized assessment test. Standardized assessment test. And these are tests that are given to all the children in England at different ages. So I think there are some given to the 11 and some at 14, and the government are trying to bring them in for much younger children. But you'll hear this if you Googled either SAT in UK or standardized assessment test, then this is what you would find under that. You also, about the research that has been carried out in the UK, you would find quite a bit of research on the influence of this testing. Yes, yes, it is different, but the purpose in a way is the same, that the scholastic aptitude test is to try to determine the abilities of children, for example in mathematics or in science or in reading, and they are trying to serve that purpose, to give the government really an indication of how the children are doing. The national, you've come across these yourselves, there are also international tests where you all judge how Thailand is doing relative to other countries in relation to mathematics and science. And South Korea, the Korean education system always seems to produce some very high results in relation to mathematics. But yes, the purpose is the same, but the tests are actually different. They come from a different source. Okay. Now this one, you look, again, another, and this is, this is Panwalai, is that Panwalai and Kitima, how do I say that? Kitima? Where is Kitima? Is Kitima here? No, not today. Kitima? See, there are 4 of you that have agreed to this. And Dr. Apunchanit is Apunchanit, thank you. Is Dr. Apunchanit here? No? Not today. Okay, we've got 4 people who have agreed on this. And again, look how powerful that is. See, I had no idea before I came that this notion of seniority, and look how well that is written, that clearly could be used by you all in terms of stating the importance of this notion of the seniority. See, the more respect you give to older people, the more polite you are. So we avoid having conflicts or any arguments. Most of Thai students prefer to listen to their teachers. This drives us to be passive and natural. So this is one of the many factors that students do not have any self-confidence to present what they want in class. Now, you just look at the difference between the quality of your responses through these emails. You know, this is really clear, it's excellent. And then, in a way, the shyness, I think, is still there with you in terms of coming to that microphone, and only a few of you have actually, you know, we've talked a little about this, haven't we, about that, the nervousness about coming to the front and expressing your ideas. But in your statements, the clarity of this is really superb. And this is, again, in a second language. So I think we need to find a way of enabling, not only your own voices, because you've done excellent work in getting your websites, your action planners, you've actually talked about the cultural problems and issues. Look at the clarity. Rita's one earlier, look at this one with 4 of you, actually saying in a way that you could put into an action research report in terms of this idea of seniority, this is so clear and powerful that there would be no doubt, given the numbers of people that are saying that this is a profound issue in Thai culture. It is one that you could all feel confident you could bring into a framing of your action research report. You could all say that one of the influences of Thai culture comes from this respect of seniority. And you could all give this issue that your students prefer to listen to teachers, and this drives them to be passive. This is one of many factors that students do not have self-confidence. They do not express freely their ideas. They are afraid to be blamed and being embarrassed. Now, this is a lovely example of how you can express a concern. You think of all of you now trying to stimulate inquiry learning in Thai education system. I think you could all take, and I could circulate this, so you've all got this and one or two others if you want them. I could send them round the e-list so you could all draw on this insight in saying that one of the issues that you want your action research to face is this one coming from the Thai culture, where the students are being encouraged to be passive. They're being encouraged not to develop their self-confidence. So you in your classroom could be focused on enabling them to speak in their own voices. You could use the action planner where they write down what they want to improve about their own learning, why they want to do it, to imagine what to do in an action plan, and then to share it with your colleagues or your other students, or even in classrooms. And you would get them talking in a way which would help their confidence to develop, but from this concern. Are you okay with this? Because this, again, was a very important letter to receive about Thai culture and the cultural constraints. So I think you're seeing the numbers of you that highlight the way in which seniority and this leading to passive learning is influenced. You've had the very exciting points about the cultural understandings and the diversity. You're all using ICT, but when it comes to writing your reports and your research using the technology, because of the constraints on your publishing as academics, you're not doing it. So Chattery asked where the journals might be that you could actually publish multimedia accounts. You might start with some of the action research journals. Now, most of those are print-based, but some are gradually opening up, like the Educational Journal of Living Theories. The editors, I'm one of them, are applying for recognition now on major international databases, so it can be seen to be an international refereed journal of very high status. So we're now actually applying for that recognition. Are you okay with this? Because as I said, this was very exciting to actually see the amazing difference between your written responses to me, which have come through the emails. 4 people have said this so well. There were 3 of you there joining that, Rita on her own, and others as well have sent their individual ones in, and the quality of these is very high. I know that Chattery, you were saying you're a bit worried about publishing because you weren't sure about the quality. Now believe me, the quality of that writing in this section here about seniority could go into any refereed journal in relation to Thai culture. I'll just check if there's any more, and then possibly we'll have a break, our first break. Yes?
I'd like to discuss the point that said that the student prefer to listen to the teacher. I think the student might misunderstood that listen to make them understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that because there's a misconception. Why the student prefer to listen to the teacher. And the teachers sometimes think that when they tell the students, they might think that the students understand what they say. This is contrary to inquiry.
So let us make sure that I've understood that. For example, as I've been speaking to you, and I've noticed this again with Japanese audiences, there will be a lot of nodding. Now in England, if you nod, it means that you understand and agree. It took me some time to realize that within the Japanese culture, they were nodding and smiling out of courtesy. They didn't understand the word I was saying. Yeah. And as a teacher, that was a lesson for me to make sure that I was really being understood. So I did not talk for a long time before I checked that I was being understood. So if I understood what you're saying, it is that sometimes in Thailand, the teachers are talking at their students and the students appear to be listening, but in fact this is going against inquiry learning because whilst the students appear to be listening, they may not be understanding. And this, again, you can bring in to your inquiry. We call it